Okay, now we're going to start the second acoustic presentation, and we're going to talk about the abstract first, because the abstract, as you probably figured out, was how I do my teaching. And you may have noticed I do my teaching a little bit different than maybe some of how your other professors do their teaching. The style that I used is a style that Vygotsky actually made very popular in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Vygotsky, by the way, was a psychologist. He was out of Russia. Tausman is a Russian name, and both he and I are Jewish, so we actually have a fair amount in common. I've been doing my teaching ways for many years and only recently discovered that my roots were based on a lot of the things that Vygotsky had to have to say. So, with that being said, the form that Vygotsky really advocated for was an approach called constructivism. The reason I put all these class discussion boards out is I want to see what you guys know first. A good teacher wants to know what the schemas are that people have. What are your schemas? What are your knowledge bases? And if I can know what your schemas are, what you do and don't know, then I can help you understand more. That if I know what you know, I will know just above what you know, called the zone of proximal development, and then I can kind of scaffold you up on new knowledge to make sure you understand it. And we even hear a lot now about the teach me back approach. I give you a couple of weeks to send me e-drafts to make sure you've got the knowledge right. This is called constructivism. Constructivism is where you try to understand what people know to begin with, and then after you understand what they know, you try to build on that, you scaffold it up. The B there, actually it should be C, the zones of proximal development, describes a lot more information there, so if that helps you write out your outline out a bit more, that's better. This approach is very different than what has often been called the empty vessel theory of teaching and learning. The empty vessel theory of teaching and learning basically says that the teacher knows everything, the student knows nothing, so you are the empty vessel, and the job of the teacher is to simply communicate all the things they know to the student, and the student will learn everything by this approach. There is absolutely no evidence to support this model as an evidence-based approach to teaching and learning, that when people do this particular thing, you lose attention within 5 minutes. You don't know what your learner knows to begin with, so you might go right over their head. This is many times the approach used in the death by PowerPoint presentations, where you don't know what people are thinking to begin with. And so the empty vessel theory is really not an evidence-based approach. Unfortunately, in my particular situation, which I don't think is unique, when you go through graduate school and you become a professor, you're usually working on research projects with professors in their labs. You don't really learn anything about teaching, but you learn to be really smart about topics. So when you go into a liberal arts college, the first thing you just figure you'll do is you know everything about these topics. You'll tell students everything they need to know and use this model. But this model is not evidence-based. So the abstract here is a little different, that Vygotsky also believed in mentoring, helping people out, teaching them, scaffolding them up on knowledge. His theory was a very cognitive theory, but there were a few key differences from his theory than Piaget's. Piaget was more, you go through these stages at a certain time of your life. It's qualitatively ordered, serially ordered. For somebody like Vygotsky, you can become an expert at something very early in life if you have the right mentors around, taking you, scaffolding you, learning things. If you have brilliant gymnasts or ice skaters or horseback riders, they might have a wonderful mentor. Mistakes are good in Vygotsky's world, because then you can learn from these mistakes. So that abstract really mapped into that particular situation. So hopefully that makes sense to you. I'll keep going here, I think, into the next Roman numeral here. What is it? Roman numeral 3 with Erikson. Erikson's theory was considered a psychosocial theory of development. The abstract you got there, and maybe we'll go down actually to the basics of Erikson. There are basically 7 stages you go through in the lifespan. So it's a psychosocial theory. And the idea is at each stage, you'll basically either go positive or negative, which could have a lot to do with how you develop psychosocially through the lifespan. The first stage he called trust versus mistrust. When we're born, from the age of 0 to 2, we usually have caretakers taking good care of us. We learn to trust the world. Now, the abstract that I think I gave you there was about the effects of war on children. If you're living in a war zone and you're a little child, the parents aren't around, people are being killed, your ability to learn to trust others might be very compromised. And for Erickson, that would lead to mistrust, so that could really set you back developmentally. The second stage, autonomy versus shame. In this stage, basically it's during the toilet training years, and if you learn how to do this properly, you will become autonomous and have a sense of personal control. If you don't, shame and doubt will result. Stage 3, the preschool years, asserting control and power over the environment, learning to do good things. School age years, industry versus inferiority, coping with new things, social, academic challenges. Are you doing that? Are you not? Your book has more than this. The teen years. Some of you may be going through this now. Identity versus role confusion. What are you going to do with your lives? If you have a good sense of what you're going to do and where you're going to go and what job you're going to do, then you'll have identity. If you're just confused and kind of vagrantly wandering around, you'll have role confusion. Later on in life, you'll have intimacy versus isolation issues, which some of you may be going through as well. Forming loving, intimate relationships, getting married, being close to people, this is very important, versus being isolated and alone, the negative way. My years, 40 to 65, I'm about 53. Generativity versus stagnation. Are you giving something back? Are you helping other people out? Or are you just stagnated? I'm very blessed in my position as a teacher. The teachers many times usually get to have generativity because my job is to help you folks learn about things. The final stage, ego integrity versus despair. Are you happy with what you've done in your life? You're accepting death willingly. You know it'll happen. Or do you just have despair about all the things that have happened at that point in time? So that is Erickson's ideas of development. Maybe I'll cover one more here for you. Maslow's ideas. According to Maslow, page 353, very different kind of theory. He didn't talk about psychosocial development or cognitive development like Piaget and Vygotsky. He talked about humanistic development, and that people basically have 5 different levels of needs of things. If you look on 353, many times it starts out with just basic physiological needs. You have physiological needs, water, food, air, housing, security needs, safety and security. Once you get those needs met at a basic level, then you go on to the more intermediate level, your social needs, belongingness, love, affection, feeling good about who you are, self-esteem. And then the highest level is self-actualizing needs. People like Gandhi and other people who have fulfilled their own unique potential in the world. So he said people are very humanistic. We can help people grow and change. I put an abstract down there before you. What I'd like you to do, I'm not going to go over the abstract, but what I'd like you to do is for your outline, summarize what the abstract is saying and how it relates basically back to Maslow. So if you can do that, that would be good. The final thing I'm going to ask you to do here is moving on to the next Roman numeral. We're going to talk about classical conditioning. There's a YouTube video to watch. I'd like you to watch it, and then I'll start the next recording. Thanks. Bye-bye.